everyone, welcome to Pattern a Day. I'm David Getson. As we go step by step, day by day through Christopher Alexander and Team's A pattern language, not the A pattern language, where the general problems of architecture and urban design are met with adaptive geometric solutions. So what is going on today? We have life cycle. This one is about, well, I'll not beat around the bush. They start literally poetically. Life cycle. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages, as first the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms, and then the whining schoolboy with his satchel and shining morning face creeping like a snail unwillingly to school, and then the lover, sighing like a furnace with woeful ballad made to his mistress's eyebrow. Then the soldier, full of strange oaths, bearded like the bard, jealous in honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice, in fair round belly with good capon lined, with eyes severe and beard of formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances, and so he plays his part. The 6th age shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon with spectacles on nose and pouch on side, his youthful hose, well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank, and his big manly voice turning again toward childish treble, pipes and whistles in his sound. Last scene of all that ends this strange, eventful history is second childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything. Shakespeare, As You Like It, Act 2, Scene 8. Therefore, make certain that the full life cycle is represented and balanced in each community. Set the ideal of a balanced life cycle as a principal guide for the evolution of communities. This means, 1, that each community include a balance of people at every stage of the life cycle, from infants to the very old, and include the full slate of settings needed for all these stages of life. 2, that the community contain the full slate of settings which best mark the ritual crossing of life from one stage to the next. Rites of passage. So it's not, this pattern states that it's not sufficient to merely have a community that is whole in its demographics, but also to respect the passing from one stage of life to another. I think we're in a grand cultural denial of this, which I hope is ending. I think lots of things are culturally ending right now, and certainly the warehousing of the old, set apart from the warehousing of the young, and the idealization and clinging preservation of that space in between, desperate stretching, racing for and then holding on to that time, has become too much. Another literary reference, C.S. Lewis in The Last Battle, which is an underrated book in the Narnia series. I think the whole Narnia series is good. And people get mad at him for saying that, oh, Susan, he's anti-feminist, this or that. Maybe he was, who cares? I think he was perfectly nice to both men and women in those books. But Susan ends up not showing up in the kingdom of heaven at the end with Aslan. And why? He says not because she was a wrong, bad, or evil person, simply because she wasn't paying attention. She stopped paying attention to these spiritual things. She stopped paying attention to imagination in Narnia, and that she became obsessed with lipstick, nylon stockings, shoes, and purses. And that there was a type of person, a type of time in life where before you hit that time in life, you're racing along as fast as you can to get there. And then once you're there, you cling on to it as much as you can before it goes away. And I thought that very, very eloquently and very aptly described something that happens not just to women, but to men and women. And it's a kind of very sad denial of these stages and cycles of life that touch all of us. And to be able to build with that in mind. Well, what does that mean? So he goes through Erikson's crises here, which I won't get into at the moment, but those are very important. You have, I'll go over them briefly: trust versus mistrust, autonomy versus shame, initiative versus guilt, industry versus inferiority, identity versus identity diffusion, intimacy versus isolation, generativity versus stagnation. Yes, I'm in the crisis of number 7, working on being generative. Integrity versus despair. That's a very sad one. But the growth through the life cycle is not inevitable, they say. Yes, because some people can have arrested development. But then we go through, he recapitulates the architectural equivalents of each stage in life. So for the infant stage, there's a birthplace, there's a setting up of the home with a crib for the young child. There's a commons connected play, a child having their own place, even if they don't have their own room, at least their own little play area. A youngster, this is the industry crisis, children's home, school, and then private entrance, paying your way, play, club, community, youth. That's where you get to an ADU for the teenagers, teenage cottage. That's another pattern coming up. Hostels, apprenticeship, commencement, marriage, work, building, young adult, the intimacy crisis. Whew, boy, we have trouble with that one lately, don't we? The intimacy crisis in young adults. Eesh. Household, couples realm, small group, the family network of learning, birth of a child, creating social wealth building. And you can see how, these are very general categories, but you can see how the way that something is physically, geometrically shaped for each stages of this life comes into play. Adult, work community. This is generativity. A work community, a family, town hall, a room of one's own. Special birthday, gathering, change in work, and then an old person. So what you want to do is have integrity. Settled work, a cottage, again a different type of ADU. The family, the independent regions, which is a pattern we've gone over already. And then for the finality of it all, something that we shouldn't gloss over, to address death, funeral, and grave sites. The 19th century, back into general architecture history, the 19th century seemed, I think because death was thrown in people's faces much more often, you couldn't deny it. People died so much and so often. For a woman to not die in childbirth in the 19th century, even in the most advanced societies, was considered a grand blessing. It wasn't considered normal exactly, but it was considered a grand relief that both woman and child were healthy. You had people dying of disease, people dying of accidents, a lot of widowed men, widowed women. So the cemeteries back then were places that people visited more often, and they were built for the public. It wasn't for the ego necessarily, sometimes yes, but not necessarily for the ego of the people who died. It was for the active grieving and celebration of the people who are living. Cemeteries are for the living, to remember and honor those who have passed on. We don't know what to do with the cemeteries these days. That would be a whole nother episode in of itself. Now, There are two today because I was very busy yesterday. So, that's the little tease of Guess My Pipe. Because we have two today, I'm not going to talk about two pipes. So we're going to have two parts. Talk about Pouch at Side with the Shakespeare quote. This being my so-called day off. This is the Peterson Perfect Plug. Perhaps it's appropriate on an old-fashioned time, so I'm going to slice this up, let that dry out. I enjoy having that on a weekend. And then the thing that goes in today, I will discuss at the end of the next little clip. And next pattern that we have is number 27, Men and Women. Next time.